ReggieCon, the con that asks the question, hey, what's your story? I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty. I'm a cognitive scientist philosopher here at Illinois State University. And today we come together to celebrate Black History Month with a discussion of this new fantastic graphic novel, Tokoloshe Hunters. Joining me today is anthropologist, good friend, colleague, Dr. Stanford Carpenter. Stanford, tell us a little something about who you are and why you love comics.
Well, hello. I'm Dr. Stanford Carpenter. I am a former archaeologist, sometime comic creator, and cultural anthropologist. I loved comics as a kid, and I love them as an adult, or as I would like to say, a kid in a bigger body. I love the ability for comics to be able to tell us things in words and pictures. I love that comics can show us what's happening on different levels, both the conscious and the unconscious. I love the surreality of comics. I love the uncanny.
No, I love exactly everything you're saying there, Stanford. One of the reasons I use graphic novels in the class, and as a matter of fact, we're recording this during a class time, is because the comics, because they're static images, they have to get their attention out of the relationships between what's there. And I try to teach my students to see the visual tensions, the cognitive tensions, the psychological tensions that the authors are working to embed in these images. So joining us in this conversation is, of course, award-winning comic author Bill Masuku. Bill, tell us a little something about yourself and why you love comics.
A little bit about myself is that I like all forms of storytelling. I have been a writer, a poet, accidentally did a one-man stage play. Don't do that to yourself.
Was that at Fringe? Was that at Fringe, by the way, in Scotland? Just asking. You mentioned something earlier.
No.
Okay, just curious. All right, just curious.
It was here in Zimbabwe. I wore a kilt and everything. Whatever the kind of storytelling is, I have appreciated, but my love of comics supersedes all of that. There is just a way and a series of windows into life, into art, into storytelling that comics just makes you feel something that no other medium can. And so I'll continue to go back to it regardless of where I go in my storytelling journey. Graphic novels are my home.
No, that's fantastic.
Tokoloshe, Pinky as a subset creature is one that specifically attacks young girls in bathrooms in school. And that warning is very specific to predators and sexual assault. But obviously the way it's told is Pinky will get you. It's like this nameless, like this formless thing about like, it's a human. We know it is. Maybe we know the names of these perpetrators, but it's easy to just make it a monster and make that the warning. So again, like when I moved into this house, the first thing they said was, put bricks under your bed. And they don't explain it, right? You have to wait a long time until like someone elderly is just like, oh, this is why, right? Because Tokoloshe will tell you. Tokoloshe are warded off by bricks or by salt. And it's something that I was told. It's not something that I read off Wiki or there was a book. This is secondhand information that's living with me. So as I draw, as I write, that's a fear that I have, regardless of how like critical and scientific I try to be. There's superstitions that live in me because they were drilled in here.
They got in there earlier before you could defend yourself, right? I mean, Stanford, did you want to pick up on that conversation?
Yeah, one thing I love about folklore, and one of the reasons why I see comics themselves as being either, depending on how the story is written, either mythological or folkloric, right? Is that the essence of folklore is as you said, it was a story that was told to you, right? And the person who told you that story heard it from somebody else. So it's a story that's like passed from mouth to ear. Now you've made it, and now you're actually taking something that came from someone's mouth to your ear, and you're giving it visuals. I mean, how do you feel about the idea that there will be people whose first encounter with this folklore will be what you created?
It's a little heavy When I was younger, when we still did dial-up internet, there's only a few things you could do, right? And so I used to go Wikipedia spelunking. So I would just find a random topic, keep clicking on blue links until, why someone had to make a phone call and you couldn't be on internet at the same time as making a call. So I spent quite a bit of time just like learning, reading. And people dedicate like whole pages, not just to folklore, but to just information building, to corral human storytelling all in one place. And the fact that if you Google Tokoloshe right now, that may not be the first result, but when someone says read more or get to the second page, or eventually its own Wikipedia page, how I've depicted it, because like you were saying, Stanford, it's always mouth to ear, right? And
Right.
the way people interpret information, and it'd be like, oh, a snarling grin means one thing to one person, means something to else, but there's something unifying about visuals. And the fact that when someone will click a link and it says Tokoloshe and it'll be like depicted by Bill Masuku, I feel like an authority. And there's also a danger to that, because someone somewhere is going to pop up, and the other side of it is that that's not what I heard. Someone else who has the same lived experience is mouth to ear will pop up and say, that is not how that works. That is not
right.
Yeah. Happy to be challenged though. I'm not a doctor.
But that's also the interesting moment, right? Because the person who heard it differently than the way you depicted it, they get the opportunity to correct it. And the reason why I think of things as being folkloric is that, in the description of traveling from mouth to ear, is that folklore is a living story, right? It's a living, evolving, changing story, that also has a different reason for being at different times, right? And that's one of the things I found really fascinating about your book, is that when we get to the pick your favorite images, it's the way you bring together words and pictures, and the way in which words are pictures, right? And I think that but I also find the other irony being that the one thing that comics don't have, which is so tied to this idea of folklore traveling from mouth to ear, is there is no sound. There's the description of sound, but there is no sound, right? But that I'm getting ahead of us.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now, I want to follow up on this idea of folklore as a shared way of being together, going all the way from the campfire to comics. If we were to conceptualize the things that go on as people tell stories, we can talk about things going on in body movements, we can talk about things going on in sound waves, and we can talk about things going on in brains as energy transformations, right? And then if part of a lot of the people in the audience here are students who, what we're trying to do is examine the possibility of what happens to our thinking about what we are and what we exist within if we conceptualize ourselves as energy transformation systems as opposed to physical versus mental systems. And then you find a lot of the things you said about stories are the same kind of phenomena that go on in genetics, right? Things are permutated, passed on, reorganized, but it's nonetheless a similar sort of transformation process. And energy has to be captured in a certain way to keep DNA in a certain space. And so this idea of boundaries that we talked about isn't just psychological, social, it's how anything can be in this energy storm we live in, right, as a sort of stable thing. So I think the idea, I tapped into that because of Stanford's comment about folklore being a living phenomenon, right? I would argue, yes, it's definitely an energy transformation system that has boundaries, and good folklore pushes boundaries, and good storytelling pushes boundaries.
I think
go ahead.
Just to get back on that, I think at a certain point, folklore needs to be more and more exciting. So not just people adding to the story, like as you tell this campfire-esque narration, if we've heard it before, that energy transfer is like muted, right? It has to be daring. Right. It has to be dangerous. It has to be this. Yes. And
Yes.
it becomes this exothermic experience from one person to the next.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, we can talk about that, about having it be scary, having it be dangerous. You know, I'm a certain age, and over my life course, what it takes to be dangerous in media, the stakes just keep getting higher, right? And as you were doing the imagery for the book, and it's a fairly violent text, I'm going to say. That's not judgy, it's descriptive, right? I mean, as you were writing the images, did you think to yourself, what kind of boundaries am I pushing? How much do I do? How much do I do it? I'm not being judgy, by the way. I'm just
No, sorry. I'm feeling
artist.
it. I'm saying it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
All right.
Ultimately, I didn't know. I'm a discovery writer. So I set out with a theme, some characters, and a general direction of the story. And I kind of let them interact organically as much as possible. And then obviously just edit to make sure that, you know, it tells like chunks of a story to see in comics.
Right.
But when if you asked me about the paper trailer, so like a couple of years back, before I like fully had the concept, I just said, I have to do this, I have to get this out of my body. I didn't have any word. I literally just did 12 pages of scenes and concepts that were not connected at all. And I took it to Comic-Con and called it a paper trailer. And even as I did the official #1, I did not think it was going to get that violent. But I know that it's very easy, especially in this day and age, when storytelling is almost synonymous with products, with IP, that it's very easy for someone to see a Tokoloshe or even hear about them and associate this monster with something like a pocket monster, like Pokemon, and be like, oh, that's cute.
Oh, fair enough.
Right? Oh, and it's like collectible, and like, you know that, oh, we have like elves. And it's like, no, I needed to make it incredibly clear that every time you heard about this, and ask anyone in Southern Africa that hears about a Tokoloshe, all of the stories are about people going missing, deep violence, assault, and like, this is my first time drawing something this like, I even catch myself like, what was that about? Right?
So you're saying you won't be selling any Tokoloshe keychains? Is that?
No, I absolutely will. No, don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. I absolutely will. But at the forefront, it needed to be clear so that it's not.
Yeah.
So I'm not fighting the dilution of people's generalized understanding of these monster concepts. Take Twilight, right? There's like a sexualization of vampires and werewolves right now, right? And I'm fairly certain, don't quote me, I'm fairly certain that's not how it started out, right? But it's easier to it's easier to be like, oh, a handsome werewolf, a handsome vampire, a handsome elf. Right. At no point will I will be sick. I'll start throwing up if I ever see a handsome Tokoloshe. That's just it's wrong.
It's not gonna happen. I love it.
Well, it's funny as you're talking about how IP can dilute, right? I'm at my desk and I'm looking across at a Funko of HP, you know, of an HP Lovecraft monster that makes him look more cute than scary, right? So I say that to say that you bring up a really interesting point about how anytime you have when you have something that's supposed to be scary, how do you keep it? How do you make it scary, right? Mm-hmm. You know, the thing that struck me about a lot of the I mean, here's the thing. I wasn't really bothered by the violence in the book. I mean, I just kind of took it as part of the story. I took it as part of the genre. Like whenever you start getting into horror, you know, it's either fear-inducing or it's over the top in gore and violence, right? Mm-hmm. You know, what I find interesting is how you contextualize it. Like this idea that you're having somebody wearing a carcass, right? And getting power from from literally wearing the shell of something else, right?
Right.
I find those things to be fascinating because it also speaks to different kinds of sort of cultural understandings of how the world works, how magic works. um I was also particularly interested in the flashbacks where the character's remembering being abused by his mom.
Mm.
That was something I loved. I actually think that there is a beauty to depicting these things and finding ways to depict these things in ways that evoke a feeling, right? Because to me that's what comics, that's one of the most powerful things comics can do,
Mm.
is the visual can make you feel something. It's not always it's not always sunshine and rainbows, but I like
Yeah.
that it evokes a feeling.
So, Bill, can you read the chat? Because our questions have been typed into the chat.
Alrighty. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so all of this is sideways.
Oh, I can read the stuff to you. You don't have to do it. I just, and I just for the sake of a transcript, if one is, being taken, I'll just read it out. I would like to know the process. Oh, this is from Sean. I would like to know the process that went into creating the power system in the novel. We talk a lot about borders in class, and a lot of the time, these labels we put on someone distances ourselves from them, and using that as a power system seems like such a cool concept.
Thanks, Sean. 20 points to Gryffindor. Ultimately, I am obviously a big anime manga fan. Like I've seen powers, all the cool power systems, all the terrible power systems, and everything in between.
Right.
And then it's like, what do you do that isn't just screaming, right? At a certain
Again.
point.
Exactly. Yeah.
I really wanted to, especially with the beginnings of the book, figure out who my protagonist could be.
Right.
So I was talking about a paper trail earlier on, and initially it was Rufaro with Chip the Rhino, because they're very mascotable. And again, like I had to step back from that. I'm like, what story am I actually telling, right?
Right.
And Aneunu felt the more natural choice as I began writing, because I'm a storyboard artist for animation, right? So sometimes I'll board out a scene visually, and then the words will generate later.
Right.
And with Aneunu, there is it's evident, even in his character design. Half of his hair is white, half of it is black.
Right.
I think everyone feels like that. Maybe they're not honest about it, or maybe they haven't felt it in a long time, but there's always this, I mean, most people would kind of say code switching, right? There's a thing in you that knows you have shifted location. I don't even know if I'm using those words correctly, but there's like the way that you speak to your doctor is very different from the way that you speak to like your mechanic, right? There's dynamic shifts, and in a world that like there's a clear delineation of monsters, because people are visually mostly all the same. But if there's like there's a thing I can speak to, and I know it is different from me, how do I interact with that? And sometimes people can feel like monsters inside themselves. Indecision sometimes makes you feel like, oh, I didn't do enough, or
yes.
Sometimes was I in the wrong? With Aneunu, sometimes you get blamed before you're born, right? He's born half human, he's born half Tokoloshe. His mother already hates him. For the record, before someone pulls the curtains blue on me, my mother is a lovely person. She's supported me my whole career. There's no, I just want on the record while we're recording this.
Yeah, none of that Freudian stuff going on here.
No. Not in my culture. But there's a very clear othering that happens visually, and I wanted to really pull that out of the characters, right? And so I was like, initially it was like wavy lines, and then again it was just like, eventually this is going to become screaming. What am I actually bringing to the zeitgeist of storytelling that I haven't seen before, but I absolutely love? And Jordan, you mentioned earlier on that we can't hear comics, and actually one of my first jobs as a comic creative was lettering, just because life stuff. I ended up being a letterer first before the other things. And I always wanted to give voice to things. And I know that's like real plain. That's a super plain thing to say when it comes to lettering. But when you look at stuff like Sandman, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, each of the characters has a different font, because that is how you identify someone, by their voice, right? Because typically in comics, you have a uniform font across the board. So when someone is speaking off panel, you as the reader are just gonna have to assume from like the flow of words, the cadence of the speaking, or however they've put apostrophes. But if it was a different font, you wouldn't have to do that labor of thinking. It's like, oh, I recognize that voice. And a combination of that and the way Japanese comics do onomatopoeia, the kanji, the expressiveness of it. And like, sure, you will find every so often an American comic book will have your biff baff booms like dynamically done. But typically the production cycle of Western comics means that like everyone is specialized and they're separated from each other, which means when I'm doing my thing, I'm not really considering what comes next. I'm considering what's before the pipeline. And then the letterer kind of just has to like figure out that if my head is here, the speech, what I'm left with is the speech bubble over here. But because in Japan, it's like the way they all work in one room, just for those who don't know, the core artist and the background, they all work in one room. And so when I'm like, I want the letters to like flow, they explain that, right? It's a communal thing, bringing those pages to life. I worked alone, so I don't have to communicate that with myself. But I really wanted to draw out the words. And at that point, it was like, isn't this the power system? Like what I'm feeling right now, or what I've felt in the past, could be my power, even if it's negative. And then I was considering, how do I flip this? And I've changed weights over the years, just because, you know, third world country stuff. You can laugh, it's fine. Because of third world country stuff. And at a certain point, even when I was super thin, because at a certain point I was fat and I was shamed for that, right? I still felt like that. I don't know if there's any larger body people in the audience, but do you know the shirt pull? Like you move in your chair and you just make sure that your shirt is all the way down, right? And I met someone maybe 2 years ago, and they're super lean, and then they did the shirt pull, and I was like, you used to be fat. And if like I didn't say hi first. That was the first thing I said. And it was like, how did you know? And I'm like, there's just mannerisms that stick with you, that are inside you, regardless of how you outwardly change. Inwardly, that shame exists. However you manifest it, because, oh, you're like, cool, you went to gym because of that shame, and then put that energy into, you know, losing weight, and now, But you're still a fat kid on the inside. That's just what it is.
Right.
So that's how I came to the power system. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes great sense. We got another question here from Xander. Was one of the reasons for the absence of color to offset the violence in the book, or was there another reason it was in black and white, or it is in black and white?
Poverty. This is just cheaper to print. It's cheaper to print in black and white. But again, I'm very much inspired by manga. Right. The way that you can tell something is blood versus other liquids that are dark with the way that it moves and the sound effects. The difference between sweat and rain and other fluids, with just cross-hatching and a kind of impressionism, right? Because sometimes you'll read a manga page, you have to read it twice because of the way the page is constructed.
Yes.
You're like, maybe I didn't get it the first time. Let me, right? Because now you're reading it in its totality, not just its individuality. I have drawn things in color. I don't even think in color, because I've read so much manga that when I'm drawing, I'm just like line, form, expression. Color is nice. Color is great, right? Yeah. But I also think it dilutes the message a little bit. Going back to the thing of like, part of what makes word of mouth so great is because there's room for interpretation. Like every audience member reads it a little bit differently, and they come away with their own liberal opinion. And like if you're spoon feeding every visual nook and cranny, be like, oh, this is a violent scene. And you didn't just get that from the fact that his mother's bashing his skull in. I'm like, dying. Literacy is dying.
Right. I quickly want to go back to something you said about reading manga and how you'll read it once in its individuality, and then you go back and read again and read it what I'll call more holistically, and that's part of what that's part of what we're talking about in the class is, in a comic book page, the text, the images don't get their meaning in themselves. Their meaning emerges contextually in relation to everything else that's on the page, everything that's happening. And then the beauty is that you can generate coherence within a page, between frames, between characters across pages, between cultures, between different graphic novels. You can have this whole system of being together, if you like, mediated by these different scales of boundaries. But they don't mean things just by themselves. And then I think one of the fun things about maybe becoming more experienced in this domain, and you understand and feel those larger scale connections more easily. And then when you're sitting here doing this beautiful artwork here, you can see the manga there, right? You can see that you've immersed yourself in that world of storytelling, and it's fascinating. So what I want to do is share the picture that Stanford sent me, and I am going to do my best for you guys to see it. And then when I edit this, like I said, I'll do a good job. So if I put this, is that going to work for you, Stanford? I'm sorry.
I can see it. Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I also have my tablet to the side, and I'm looking at it.
Okay,
at the
perfect.
same time.
All right, I'll keep this up for the audience then. Go ahead, Stanford. Tell us why you like this image.
I love the idea of having a figure defined by words, literally defined by words, right? And what I love about this is the words don't seem to be like, oftentimes when you do it, there's this feeling that you're labeling an image, but I don't feel like the image is being labeled, in part because there's multiple words in there. And I love the way like the flesh seems to bind the words, and the words seem to function almost like a nervous system. Yeah, there's just something about that, and compositionally, I think that this page works really well as a black and white image. Or as a black and white page. Because that's always one of the difficulties in using black and doing things in black and white, right? Is that you don't have, sometimes it's really hard to give the type of depth that you want, right? When you have multiple panels, each of which are lit differently, because there's things you have to do for lighting and there's things you have to do for distinction. And that's the one benefit of color. But sometimes, but this is a page where I actually think that I don't think that color would have added anything to this. I think it would have actually taken away from it. And I'll say that about, I don't know if do you want to show the other images or do we want to
I didn't see the other images. I just saw the one.
Oh, okay.
Let's just stay on this page for a second, because I want to talk about it as well. No, are you finished, or?
Yeah.
Because what I love about is the power. I loved everything you just said about this one, and we'll talk about why I think words are matter in living systems. But there's a power up going on here, and it starts with her eyes, and then it goes to her body surrounded by words, and then this image makes you experience this one as if she's sucking the words into her being, and then they become her. And the very next scene is not even her, but it's the effects of her power, and it's the dude's finger coming off, right? So I appreciate what I'll call the embodiment of the words in the one frame, and then the complete embodiment of the words. And one of the things we talk about in this class is, if we talk about ourselves as energy transformation systems, then everything I am is an embodiment of the world I evolved in and lived in. So my brain, my skeleton, my muscles, my heart, my lungs are all about moving a mass together through a gravity field, right? So everything about me is already about the world I'm in. So there's no disconnect between me and my context. And words work much the same. I like to think of words as what I call cognitive pheromones, right? In other words, ants are able to give rise to ant hills, not because they talk about it, but because all ants secrete and detect pheromone. And when an ant detects food, the pheromone it releases changes. And it walks back, follows the pheromone gradient back to the nest, blah, 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 blah. None of those ants is actually trying to dissipate pheromone or detect pheromone. It's what they do. And none of us necessarily try with communicating with each other in terms of words and images. It's how we stay connected to each other, particularly in imaginary realms, right? And the idea of sitting around a fire and sort of practicing staying connected to each other in imagination. It's fun. And it also makes it easier for us to get more energy per unit work. Because if we can talk about what we're going to do tomorrow when we go hunting, we can save a ton of energy versus just telling everybody to go out and get it. So all of that I find kind of embedded in the dynamics of these pages here, the power up, the release, and then as Stanford was talking about, just the full-on embodiment of those meanings. So very much enjoyed that. I'm going to ask Bill, did you have a response to Stanford or myself? I want to keep that space open, and then we'll go to a student question.
Yeah. On that first page, I really did my best to make it like as shocking as possible. Partly because of a memory that I have. So when I was in God forbid, grade 5, or 5th grade for you guys. When I was in 5th grade, our teacher was absent once, and I wasn't like the good class. Like we weren't the most well-behaved, we weren't the smartest. We're just as average kids. You know, you go to class, you joke, you leave.
Yeah.
But our teacher was absent one day, and we had to be lumped with the other teacher. And there was an atmosphere shift. And you think your lived experience is uniform, but like because you're in this box where everyone wears school uniforms, you're all right the same way. You know, like the curriculum is set for a group, not an individual. You assume that other classes in your same grade have the same lived experience. Absolutely not. We walked into that classroom after their teacher came to get us, and then you hear like a giggling. But the giggling was different from the way that we giggled. It was like a sinister giggling. And as we walked into this new classroom, we delineated the classrooms like NES, like Northeast, South. So I was in North, walked into East, and on the board, just scrolled across the whole, like 3 blackboards was just the word whore. And when I tell you I was flabbergasted that like this, and then she didn't even react. She just was like, okay, rubbed it out and continued her day. Like this is something that this isn't even the height of what they do to her. And I was like, ha.
Wow.
And the way that she treated us was with such delicacy and with such softness that it's like people will attack the most vulnerable. And so even as I drew that image, she has a halo, and the word whore are wings, right?
Yes.
That's what it was. And then like you're saying, like really internalizing the words, right? Compacting into this real like singular moment, and then like slicing someone's head off. Obviously, it's fantastical on that second end, but the first end was something that I saw. I saw like that juxtaposition of how people speak to you and how you live your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, very well said. Thank you for that very much. I'm going to read a question from Reed. In the opening pages 8 through 9, Tokoloshe are shaped by fear and harmful words. And I'm going to say Hutama. Page 20 is Hutama?
Yeah.
Hutema?
It's a hutema.
Hutema is described as a force built from society's insults. In both the early infighting scene and the later conflict, Ananyu is othered for being half human, half Tokoloshe, and pushed to prove whether he's good or bad. At the same time, some of the supposed heroes seem willing to cross moral lines in the name of doing good. Were you intentionally blurring the line between hero and monster to show how othering and the belief that you are justified can turn good into something harmful?
I mean, it's unfair if I just say yes. Like if I just say yes, but that's not why I'm here.
Right.
That's a fantastic observation. I think a lot of the time, when you read hero stories, it's evident from the go that they are good people, right? So take any like classic superhero story, even if you go with the X-Men, right? They look like the Avengers, right? They wear costumes, they save the day, they have tragic origins like most other characters. But when it comes to, I don't know how many of you have lived on the continent, but where racism is just readily and visibly apparent in America, that divide, there's divisions elsewhere, right? So you go to like Southeast Asia, the caste system there is alive, right? The light skinned versus dark skinned within the same like ethnic class is alive. In South Africa specifically, they have so many tribes, Zulu, Xhosa, Sepedi, like that Nguni said, even if we grew up in the same classroom, same areas, I find out that you're not from my tribe, the way I look at you is different. Right. And sometimes the more you learn about someone, there's always a teetering moment of, they feel more human to me. They aren't a caricature, but it's also like, it's very easy to start checking boxes of differences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when there's too many boxes of difference and too many boxes of similarity, now it's choice, right? So these characters that are in a situation where they fight monsters but risk becoming monsters themselves, it's just like, does the end justify the means? You know, that thread is constant throughout the story, in particular with the back half of the book, where you have the church or religious characters that are like, I'm pious enough, like I was chosen by God to do this thing, right? Like that true, don't use the Lord's name in vain, doesn't mean like, don't say God damn it. It's literally, don't act like in violence or act negatively using my name. And it's like, we do that all the time, right? Whether it's wars that are happening right now or in the past, and certainly wars in the future, sometimes it's someone's holding on to a belief that we're different, even if we aren't. We're from the same land, same soil, maybe even the same family, right? I see you different, regardless of how you see me. I hope that answers your question, Reed.
You know, that's fantastic. How about you, Stanford? You want to comment on that?
No, no.
Okay.
I feel like you kind of left it at like the perfect mic drop moment. To be honest.
Yeah, it was. Go ahead.
You know, I think that you know, I'd kind of like to also, because the other image I sent you, I guess it didn't come through somehow, but I sent multiple images. I'd kind of like to share that and pick that up, because it actually ties into where you ended what you said. The other image that I was really taken by was, it was right after he's recalling being killed by his mother. And you have like the page where it's just black with white lettering, and then and then the next page is this one, which is another one of those pages where I feel like color wouldn't have added anything to it, right?
That was actually my second pick too. Damn. Go ahead.
Thinking along the same lines. But I think what's interesting is one of the things I thought of is I'm just gonna read really quickly what he's thinking in the scene. He's like, in the shed behind the house, I cried for days. As I put myself back together, bone by bone, muscle by muscle, I was careful, always have been, to keep the shape of a human in mind as I heal. I don't want to scare her. She didn't ask for this, right? The way he talks about what just happened and that is filtered by this understanding of himself as being half monster, right? And then I was also thinking about the abuse by his mother. Like how does abuse change when you can't really kill, when you can injure, but you can't even kill the target of your abuse. And then I was also, then the phrase that keeps coming over my head, and I have different answers every time I think it is how do you love a monster? Right. And that ties very much into something that myself and John Jennings, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, we had coined the term the ethnogothic to talk about these types of issues, right? Is that, in these scenes, in this embodiment of words, but also in this brutality around someone being, in this case, I'm not going to say other, I'm going to say half other. And I actually think it's important that he's half other as opposed to full other, because as you're dealing with him as other, you're denying half of who he is, and vice versa, right? So I think that there's like another layer of schism. If he was just whole other or whole self, like a lot of what's happening would make more sense. But in essence, I see an additional level of brutality, frustration, and a sense of the uncanny that's layered in by the fact that he is definitively half monster, not full monster, half monster. And so I guess I want to hear more about your thoughts about like being half monster. How does one love a monster, and what does abuse mean in this context?
Man, that's so big, man. So
big.
I
mean, no pressure.
How does one love a monster? One day at a time. That's the quick answer.
Well said.
Sometimes, and this goes back to something I said earlier, is the checking the boxes. Sometimes safety is not a box, I know this, the Stockholm syndrome has been like debunked, but like when you stay in proximity of abuse or people who don't even like you long enough, you see the small things in them that make them people, right? It'll be like, maybe we can do like Netflix documentary. People will watch Jeffrey Dahmer eat people and still be like, because you're seeing all the moments, right? But the victims you only saw like the end. When you're watching these like biopics, you're seeing the totality of, say, like Steve Jobs. You're not just seeing the technology and the result of his being. You're seeing why he was frustrating, why he was difficult to work with. And at that point, you're sympathizing because you're like, we wouldn't have Apple if he didn't push people, if he wasn't abrasive, right? In order to sharpen something, you need to be abrasive, right? And again, you watch that biopic and you're on Steve's side. And part of storytelling is who's telling the story, who the story is about, why the story is being told, right? And so I ask this question typically when I'm giving lectures, when it comes to defining what an African comic book is, because it's like, is Black Panther an African comic book? Because that's as half as you're going to get. It's about Africa and like kingdoms, but it's written by, people who didn't live here. And there's a course correction for that, but don't want to get too much into Black Panther. And then ultimately you have this no answer for new things. And that's why new things are often scary to people, because there's no definitive yes or no. With this pronouns thing, right? In my language, we don't have he or she, right? We typically just have they. That's how the language formed. We're so in commune with each other that like the delineation between the two, like obviously there's words for male and female, but when referring to each other interpersonally, there isn't that, right? And so sometimes you hear a story and it's just like, I don't know who this is about because of that vagueness. And when you superimpose yourself on top of what you've heard, it's easier to to sympathize, because like someone will like, let's say you're super far leaning in either direction, and you hear something ambiguous. That ambiguity allows you to superimpose, and then you learn, oh, that was actually a terrible person / someone who's completely on the other side of my political spectrum. Now it's like, okay, now I can push all the way back and create this wall between me and them. But that vagueness allows a welcoming. I hope that answers your question.
Well, that vagueness, as you said, provides an approach opportunity. And if I might say, one of the things that being experienced in contemporary American culture on a grand scale is the competition between approach avoid, people who want to let people in, both to themselves and into the country, and then people who want to keep people out, both from themselves and both out of the country. And to the point where we have very vocal individuals on both sides of this thing, this phenomenon. And we don't have to go into that too much, but all of these ideas about ambiguities and how you collapse them, there's a psychological measure called need for closure. And there's a continuum. A lot of people need closure. And what that means is they need their brain to be stable. And then there's a lot of people who just love surprise, and surprise is inherently destabilizing. It violates expectations. And, for the sake of the species, we had a continuum of need for closure and, openness. And at the same time, in order to keep all those folks together, you can't let them divide. You can't let the need for closure camp become something different than the need for surprise camp, because they're different types of systems. And right now, man, over here in this country, those differences are being maximized. And Stanford can comment on this one, but I think what we're finding is I think a lot of this is in the end being driven, of course, we call it racism, but it's at the same time, there's a lot of money being made by running algorithms in social media systems that polarize people, keep them activated. Advertisers will pay if people stay activated because they get it. So we've allowed a system into our system that actually splits us, and we sometimes don't even know that it's happening.
Damn.
I also wanted this. I was careful, always have been, to keep the shape of the human mind as I heal, right? So what strikes me about that is this idea of paying attention to what's happening to you, not just paying attention to it, but paying attention to the kind of form you want it to become a part of, right? And that has to do with, who do you want to be? What kind of system do you want to be? And that's also that's a way you can approach people. What's it like to be to you today, and who do you want to be? And how does what's happening now relate to where you want to be and eventually? And if we think of all that in terms of energy transformation, it's just a life of lived work, right? How do you organize your time to become who you want to be? How do you take what's happening to you now and manifest that in who you want to be? So the whole image we just looked at before of the woman taking the words and bringing them into herself, the teacher you told us about, who then brought those things into herself and then did what she did with them to remain magnanimous, open, and, as I think the word used, maybe gentle or kind with you guys. So keeping in mind who you want to be is quite a big deal and quite useful.
We don't always get to choose how we heal, right?
Yes.
It's typically like hurt people. And just being mindful on not so much your triggers, but I guess triggers, that's faster. Being mindful of your triggers. I'll get like a 5-minute tangent avoiding the way, but just being mindful of your triggers and how they affect you. Like if you grow up in like in a very loud household, right? Maybe you are verbally abused, you learn to be quiet. You learn to, and then you also learn people's gaits, like the sound of someone's, is like, oh, that's my sister,
Yeah.
oh, that's my brother. And it becomes this like space where if words are hurtful, that's also adjacent to all sounds, right? So loud banging of doors, whatever it is, breaking of glasses. So both low and high sounds are now have your hyper attention. Part of, while we're talking about this healing thing, when he put a healing thing, box check, as well as different systems working together. So I took an elective in uni, which was Psychology 1, and I loved it. It changed my entire life. And
that's awesome.
When I learned about, and obviously like you learn about it in biology, but like the way the information was given to me about the central nervous system and the peripheral, and just thinking like, if you had the control to reshape yourself, if you had like, if most systems of your body are not under your command, like when you sweat, just think like, if you had command over that simple. Now it's as simple as, if I'm hurt, what shape do I need to take so that I'm never hurt again?
Yeah.
Right. I wish a lot of us. I wish I had that. I wish a lot of us we had that power.
Yeah, I think for the people that grow up in the loud households, you learn to be quiet, but you also learn that you're never going to live that way once you're not there, right? Hopefully that it can make you or break you, right? And that's kind of the idea of healing, is trying to remember who you want to be and trying to integrate all that energy into that movement. So Ashley wants to know, when did you start with visuals in mind first, or the dialogue and narration?
Visuals. Writing is hard. Yeah, finding the right sequence, and as Jordan was saying, like words don't exist in a vacuum, and it's how you stack them over time, or even into speech bubbles. That took a lot of patience. So like, I could rush through the art because that's a lot of emotion.
Right.
And then like the intention of even naming the book, finding the word Tokoloshe Hunters, because I could have done it in a different language. Then it's harder to find for people who don't necessarily, resonate with words that are outside of their culture or religion. Naming of the characters, I could have made it super simple. But then it was just like, as the creator, right, as the god of this world, I also get to give that name meaning in reverse. Like I'll have a character and I'll be like, I'm giving you this name because of something down the line that I'm expecting the audience to pick up on later.
Yeah.
And it is such a slow and like, once you name something, right, it's just there. Like the big difference between visuals and words, like obviously pictures tell 1,000 words, blah, blah, blah. But once you name something, it becomes this fixed point in reality. Even figuring out what the power system was. I was so skeptical about just, again, avoiding something that became screaming.
Right.
And what you're supposed to do, like if you all work in whatever industry, Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, the process is idea first, then treatment, then script, and then you start to look for the rest of the art. That's how the production pipeline works in America / the West. In Japan, a little bit more fluid because it's all one creator. And because I'm one creator and I'm a full-time artist, I'm not always writing. Again, those words were so difficult. And I also had to consider that because of colonization, English is my dominant language. The way I speak now is typically the way I speak around the house. I do speak more than one language, but it's easier for me to come up with like a flowetry when it comes to like, in like this stream of consciousness as I write these words. It is so much easier for me to do that in English than it is in Shona or any other language that I know. And so that intention also had to carry across is like, is this vague in another language? And I'm not going to translate the book. That's not one of my skill sets. And so even as a translator, thinking about how those words are coming across, is it the same feeling, right? Because hurt and pain mean the same, they're synonymous. But like there's a feeling with pain, right? Pain feels like it's shaking. hurt. Like I could stub my toe. I'm not pained because I stubbed my toe. Right. So as each of you go out into the world and you create comics, make your own order of things, whether you want to do art first, writing first, your conclusion first, and work towards that. Building your own story into it. Maybe you've always had the words, diary entries that you want to pull apart, like my experience with my teacher. Some of these things are just building blocks that, like Jordan was saying, don't exist in isolation. But once you start stacking them with intention, that is when the words become a script, which become dialogue, which become communication.
No, it's fantastic. So I'm going to do this remaining student question right now. This is from Lay. What was the most fun, rewarding part of this process, and what was the most challenging part that taught you something along the journey while creating this piece?
The most challenging thing was my laptop crashed.
No.
And I'm like, no, it's cool. I got backups. And I'm telling you, I'm bewitched because I'm looking at my backup folder and everything but what the folder, the one folder, I'm like, how was this affected? I have a 3-4 terabyte hard drive over there, and the one folder I needed. And so it was like, I have to rebuild this from like images that I had been posting on social media and like take make these storyboards. This is like voice notes that I had sent to myself as notes, right? Because all of those are part and parcel of building a story. But I was like, it's easier for me to rebuild. And I guess I'm answering both sides of the question at the same time. It's easier to rebuild if you've been putting out that energy into the world in the first place. A lot of people, the writers specifically, some of the best written books are untitled document number ones and they're never posted, right? Yeah. In this age of social media and also in the age of data scrapping, you can go either way. But I would say post as much as possible. Between my Patreon, my Instagram, Twitter, and just people I care about on WhatsApp, that saved me a lot of just pushing the idea out of me. Because had my computer crashed, and yes, I still have the drawing ability and the time to do it, but without those scraps that were like breadcrumbs to build back the story visually, I genuinely would have just said, nah, this book's not coming out. I don't have the energy. But because I already put it out there, I had to get it back. Right. That's my advice to you. Like, backup. Outside of writing, just have backup. Flash drive. Send it to a friend. Send it to an enemy, right? Because your enemy is going to keep it safer because they think it doesn't matter what file format, PDF, doc, whatever, text file. Please learn from my mistake.
Oh my goodness. And when you send something off to someone else, does it feel different?
Absolutely.
Do you feel, what's that difference that you know when you send it off to someone else?
There's a deep sense of vulnerability. Like I've obviously been this a long time, but like as much as you're putting out your ego, like, oh, I made this. This is mine. I built this from scratch. This didn't exist without me. It's also just like the reason why even like artists who have like hundreds or millions of followers, sorry, hundreds of thousands, hundreds didn't make that, hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, they will still get hurt over crit on their latest image, is that typically, and most people don't talk about this, is that creative work isn't right now. Like, well, let me rephrase that. If I put out something, whether it's art, writing, music, poetry, me right now, it's an accumulation of me. And if you don't like this, you don't like the accumulation of struggle that it took for me to learn, to build myself back, to get to this point. And like, it's a quiet hurt. It's a quiet being like true. Like you say, the fingers are wonky. You're not telling me that the on this picture, the fingers are wonky. You're telling me that I do not know how to draw fingers. That is like communicating two different, like you're saying one thing, but what I'm hearing is being like backdated to the first time I tried to draw, and I got that same, and I haven't learned. Like it really sets you back. That I don't even know what question I'm answering. I've triggered myself. I'm triggered.
Well, all you gotta do is go back and imagine the image that Stanford and I thought was the most powerful image, and that was the person composed of words, and recognize that anything you say to anyone always goes into that world, not the world of logic, right? Not the world of a computer program, but that world. And there's so much, as you said, quiet hurt in that world. And maybe perhaps some quiet joy here and there. So,
here and there.
Yeah, and exactly. So I'm going to ask quickly, do any more students or audience members have questions?
Questions,
so I'm going to go ahead.
theories, quagmires, suggestions. You're going to tell me I can't draw fingers? I can't. It's fine.
You can definitely draw missing fingers, right, man?
Without
Exactly. Well, exactly. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to have Stanford, if he has any last words he wants to share with everyone here.
I'm going to say this. I love this book. What I loved was, it goes back to what I said earlier, is this idea of an evolving story, a story that has where the story itself has life. And that was one of the things that was intriguing for me, as well as these questions about it's a small thing, but this idea of being half a monster, it's something I can't get out of my mind. Is this idea of being half a monster, as opposed to usually when we see something that is half monster, we still refer to it as a monster, as if like being a monster dilutes everything. So I wanted to make sure that I reiterated how much I love those elements of what's being done here. That's really that's really what I have to say, and I just want to say thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for that, Stanford. I have a quick final question. Are you a fan of Junji Ito?
No, actually, it's surprised everybody.
Okay.
Nah.
Okay.
The way the Japanese do horror, I like to sleep.
Well, I had no interest for romance. I gave the son of a friend of mine a copy of Uzumaki, which is a spiral town, and I'd forgotten some of the unbelievably violent images, and I asked him for it back when I recognized what I'd given him. I just wondered if there might be some inspiration there. I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I read the book. I have to admit, I saw it on Kickstarter. I said, okay, African mythology. Let's check it out. And I've read it 3 or 4 times. And the violence has become more and more integrated into the story for me over time. I'm just going to be honest with you, right? In other words, we all come to the world the way we come to the world, right? And when I see a page like this is the one Stanford was just talking about, but when I see what's going on over here, and then I'm sure you did this as a page opener, I don't know what you call it, page opener, where this somehow transforms what this means, and this transforms what this means. That's exactly the kind of thing I'm trying to teach my students about every moment of perception every day. Everything you're experiencing is relational, and to relation to what you just had for lunch, what you did 3 years ago, where you want to go tomorrow, and where you are now. And recognizing that in that, what I'll call a world of ubiquitous relationality, borders have to be there. And I think this gives us a way to conceptualize difference that's a little different than just saying borders are bad. And so this is why I have my students read comic books, so we can find visual order visual tension in the pages, as well as cognitive tension, social tension, psychological tension, cultural tension. So I absolutely love this book, and thank you so much.
Anytime. Well, I mean, next Kickstarter, but anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. So any final comments you might have, Bill?
I really appreciate it. I really appreciate this conversation that we've had. This has been an exciting trio. I think you've both brought a broader spotlight. Obviously, like everything I make in this, it's well intentioned, but when people look into the book, they don't just look at the book; they look into the book, and then they decant what their lived experience is mixing the reading experience. I'm walking away like, yeah, I know what to tweak for book 2. Yeah, I know what to cook. And again, for someone somewhere, whether it's in the audience or whether you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that bell notification so you don't miss any of our updates. This is a campfire conversation. Sometimes YouTube videos are campfire This is sometimes a human connection of us sitting together, and sometimes the folklore is folklore itself. And I hope you're empowered, you're energized, whether to pick up a pen, pick up a book, live a little, and make sure you document your experience. I don't think we do that enough as a people. Some of the best stories are just personal with a mask, and however you want to wear that mask, wear it proudly, because you're the only one who gets to dictate your next steps. So thank you again for listening, Doctor. Appreciate your time for taking out in the day. It's 10 to 10 for me, but I absolutely feel like it's the start of the next day for me. So thanks.
Oh, fantastic. Please stick around. I'm going to wrap up the show, but I have a couple things I want to talk about with the two of you before we leave. So thanks to all of you. Anyone who wants to see any previous ReggieCon videos, you'll be able to find this one on YouTube at Dark Loops Productions. And we probably have at least 30, 40 other ReggieCon conversations there now. Join us next month when we'll be talking to the author of Sita's Ramayana, which is going to be fantastic. So until next time, have a good evening.